Who are guys? You complained for a few weeks that me and Cav weren't giving you enough news, that we were just giving you too much chit chat, and I've decided to just blow things up. So you wanted news, and you've got me regularly. You know that I give you the most up-to-date news, the most breaking news that there is that other guys can't give you. But so is this guy over here on my right. We are bringing together the two most, I would say, the two best sources for wrestling news. The two people that are giving you stuff that isn't, who's renewing their TNA contract, who got injured on an indie show, who produced what match on Raw, which is what people are actually paying for. None of that shit. Real news. It comes from me, and it definitely comes from the guy on the right-hand side who also doesn't give a what he says, Brad Shepard. Or should I say Brad Shepard?
Brad Shepard.
Right.
Billy, it is a pleasure to be here. I think this is going to have people talking. This is going to be a whole hell of a lot of fun. And it's a privilege and an honor to be here with you for this show.
Let's talk about it, because we haven't given AW anything here on the show. One of the reasons I reached out to you to sort of do this exchange was you had some very big AW stuff that was giving you a lot of heat last week, which I want to get to. But before we get to that bit of news and whatnot, let's talk about the media scrum. Let's talk about the product. Let's talk about how you felt like it looked Tony look. Is it a work? Isn't it a work? Is MJF a work? Was that whole thing a work? Like, where are you sitting with AW right now?
So I was always skeptical. I mean, it's pro wrestling, so you're always skeptical. Is, a given thing a work? You're always kind of wondering that, right? You never kind of know unless you know you're on the inside. But the thing with AEW is it's out of control. I mean, it's really not a work. Now, can they take things and run with them? Yeah. Can they turn them into business? They should. That's what they should have done. And have they to some degree? Probably. But, the thing to me is when you have CM Punk and he unleashes on the fake news wrestling media, and that's what they are. That's why I call them every week on my podcast, Brad Shepard Unleashed. That's what they are.
Because I said to Joe Feeney, who does all the technical stuff, let's get me into the media scrum and ask a real question. He said no chance. I was like, how are K100 not represented in this media scrum? Because this, keeping it 100 is a huge podcast. So why, me, you, we're never going to be there. Why? Because what? We're going to ask an honest question.
Absolutely right. That's the thing. They know, and Tony Khan himself knows, who the real people are. The people he wants to avoid. They're going to ask the real questions that aren't the marks, that aren't going to kiss his ass, that aren't going to say, I've asked presidential candidates questions, and this is the most nervous I've ever been.
That was pathetic. I couldn't believe that. Yeah.
Embarrassing! Are you kidding me? So CM Punk totally cucks these guys. Who considers themselves a real journalist? So he sets the stage right away. So he clowns everyone there in the wrestling media. And then he clowns Tony Khan. Totally cucks him in front of everybody. It was really fascinating to watch because, Punk clearly seemed to be ready to unleash this because the fake news wrestling media, whether you like Punk or not, had a narrative, right, about this entire situation with Colt Cabana. And they were reporting whatever they believed or speculated or heard from the janitor. And he's fed up with it. And the dynamic to watch Punk with Tony Khan, and basically Punk to say, no, Tony, it wasn't your place to do this. And him just to go off and Tony to stand there or sit there, just not to say anything. Could you imagine Vince McMahon would have told CM Punk, all right, this is the end of the interview, or shut the f*** up, or this is over. We're wrapping this up now, right? Tony has never been in this position before. Tony is being out-alphaed by CM Punk live during this media scrum. And by the way, I think these media scrums are ridiculous. It's a joke. They shouldn't even happen. This is a fake TV show. Why should we be asking the fake wrestlers? These guys aren't fighting each other. Why should we be asking them questions about fake matches, about fake pushes? It's the dumbest thing ever.
Because if you have that media there, which they do, because if you have a, what am I trying to say? If you have a lamestream media covering your product, which they do, they have this weird. And the thing is that look, it's a cycle. They've got they've got this corny little media that will cover it, and the guy that owns it buys into that corny little media because he grew up, despite the fact that he grew up with money, and he can own a football team, which he doesn't run properly, and he can run a soccer team, and he can he can have the biggest. His dad could buy him the biggest strip club in Vegas, and he could be around all day. That's what I would do. He fantasizes about this. He fantasizes about booking a wrestling territory. He's openly come out and said that in school, he booked wrestling in his school books. He said that. I said that. I did that too. Like I did my teenage years. I would fantasy book SummerSlam '97 or the Hart Foundation USA feud. Like I'm sure I did it, right? But I don't do it now. And to run this company like this and to not run it for profit, which is absurd to me, does not make any sense. Like he wants to have the approval of these people. It's insane. That's why they're there, and that's why we have it. It's a chance for him to say at the end of the show, what did you guys tell me? I can't wait to read what you're gonna say. Like, tell me, I want to know now what you it's like a fucking kid on Christmas Eve. Like, that's what he can't wait till Christmas to read what they have to say. He wants to know immediately. He wants instant gratification from these people, right, face to face, about how they felt the show went. Like that's what it is. It's all for him.
Well, I mean, he's at a Jacksonville Jaguars football game, and he is booking a wrestling show. That's a thing he actually did. So this is a guy who is a wrestling mark first, right? He just is. Whatever you think of it, that's what he is. And so that's his approach. And so you got the boys coming in, right, all the talent. They realize this. They're not stupid. They can smell it a mile away, and they take advantage of this guy. And so that's how you end up with a locker room that you can't control. Because you're a wrestling mark instead of a boss who's managing talent and properties and money. It's just like, and Oprah, and you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car. It's like, you get $1 million, and you get $1 million, and you get $1 million, and you get a contract, and you get a contract. And it became all ex-WWE. That's what AEW became. And, he lost his way of what they were supposed to be. And he's not the only one. Chris Jericho is another one who I see that I think he's had an exceptional career, but he's damaged it at an AEW. I mean, what he's doing right now and the negative things he's saying about WWE, it just feels... it's ridiculous. And I just feel like Tony Khan has got to get control of that ship. It's completely off the rails. And I'm looking forward to talking about some of those things that we're going to talk about in a little bit regarding that.
Well, we can get onto that now. Like I want to get onto that because, yeah, I mean, I want your AEW stuff. I want to know, like, because AEW, I'm very open with the stuff with things in terms of my AEW. My AEW source is nowhere near as strong as my WWE stuff. My WWE information is deep rooted from things that I did from 10 years ago in terms of the friendships I made, things that I organized for them on tour. It's a deep relationship with wrestlers, camera crew, inside people who work in like publishing, creative. I've got my fingers in pies across the board across WWE. I can sometimes when I think something sounds fishy, I can verify it. So like when someone like Karrion Kross is upset with me and wants to talk to me about it at a convention, I can say to him, "Hey, look, I got it. I wasn't even keen on your story because you're a friend of Disco. I had to get the permission of Disco. I had to get the permission of Conan. I had to tell them that I triple verified the story, and then I spoke about it, right? Because it was offensive to his wife or girlfriend or whatever she was at the time. So he accepted that when we spoke. So this is the thing with me with WWE. I have no doubt whenever I say things, when I turn around and go, when people turn around and say, oh, maybe Roman's going to lose it to this guy, or maybe he's going to lose it to Brock, or maybe Drew McIntyre is going to win in the UK. Nope. I say nope. I say he's going to Mania. They're desperately trying to get The Rock. They want The Rock. They want The Rock. They want The Rock. He's not going to lose till he gets to The Rock. Keep saying it. Like, people can put all these different stories out. They can say that Cody's going to replace The Rock. Can you imagine that Cody actually did replace The Rock after all this time, and it was Cody wins the Rumble? I mean, Cody could win the Rumble, and they could find a different way to split two titles, no doubt. But if you don't give people Rock Roman at WrestleMania, it's going to be a massive, massive letdown. I almost feel like there are not millions or hundreds of thousands, but there are a good chunk of people holding on to the product at the moment, waiting for that payoff, right? I know my son's like one of them. So getting to my point, my WWE stuff is solid. My AEW stuff, not so much. So I have people like who've brought people over to the country for signings and whatnot. AEW people have a weird contract where they're long-term to AEW, but they're independent for special products. So through that, I've been able to find out bits and pieces about AEW. But I admit, like, it's nowhere near as strong. This idiot who works for SAP, he tried to, on behalf of SAP, this guy called Will. Do you know this guy, Will Washington?
Will Washington. So Will, I do know of him. Will used to have a podcast, RB Our Neighborhood. And right. Will used to let his white friends call him. Will is married to a white wife, lives in the suburbs, but he's one of these social justice warriors that loves to remind people he's black and talk about the black causes. But it's really all phony, performative. So that's Will Washington in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, anybody that sucks up to Sean Ross Sapp is exactly going to be that. But I mean, he tried to be friendly. Like, after everything that was going on with Sapp, he said to me, "Oh, hey, just to let you know, your W." He went. It was something along the lines of, "I know." He goes, "I know." He goes, "Your I have to admit, your WWE stuff is solid." Like, he was kind of basically saying to me, "Oh, we get all the real info. We know." Like, he did it in a way it was like, "Oh yeah, we get everything, and actually, what you report is quite close to what we hear." It's like, dude, I don't give a what you hear. I don't give a like. I don't need you to validate me. Jesus. When I beat you guys on a consistent basis, and I do it now on a free platform on purpose. So, and then he goes, but you know, your AEW. He goes, I'm just letting you know, your AEW stuff ain't right. So he was trying to befriend me, and he was trying to go down the line of, hey, your WWE stuff's great, but your AEW stuff's not right. He goes, can I just ask who you heard that from, and all this kind of like I was gonna enter into this relationship with Sap. Like, I wanna, like, again, like Bing was saying, like, I'm trying to climb this invisible ladder, and I want to be friends with you, Will Washington. I don't. So I immediately blew this guy off. So he immediately said, look, I don't give a you think. So that's the issue I have with him, because he came from it from a different route. He thought like he could be this like mediator between me and Sap, which I had no interest in at all. But yeah, I'll admit, like, when you broke your AW stuff last week, I didn't know about any of it. So that's why I thought, like, you know, this whole me and Brad are going to now pop onto each other's shows. So let's get him on like ASAP to talk about some of the stuff and obviously some of the stuff you said, which got you heat again. And I think some of the stuff you said, had you been working with Bin or Rad Rob, or was it Pro Sports Extra?
Yeah.
Where you were at one point, or I think you could have got kicked off again, but you're now safe. You're now safe where you are. So let's talk about it here, because you can't get me kicked off. So
yeah, that's the thing they hate, is now that I'm independent, they can't kick me off. There's nothing they can do, and they get really mad when they can't.
And you can't get me kicked off either. So yeah, let's talk about it.
So AEW has been such a show backstage for a long time. You know, a lot of the stuff going on, is not new per se. It's that the wrestling media, who is aware of it, has not reported it. They've been afraid to report it because they're not real media, as we know. But they're afraid to lose their access, right? Those fake media scrums, the access to the interviews with the talent. So they're not going to report those.
That's the only thing that's when they claim to be journalists, the media scrum is the only journalistic thing that they do.
Yeah, absolutely. So they don't want to report that. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on.
We have this weird geeky of validation. Tony validates them as journalists, and they validate him as a booker. It's like a weird little geeky. Do you get what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Every one of them validates each other's place in life, or in this industry.
But see, men like you and I, Billy, don't need that validation. That goes back to the acceptance I talked about. They crave that. They need that. I don't need that in pro wrestling. I don't need that in life in general. That's just my personality. But they do. So they're not going to report, for example, that Christian has been having sex with Britt Baker. Just close your eyes. Apparently, that's what she's been doing. And so
give us the background on that before you give us any more. Because because people are going to say she's with Adam Cole and Christian's married, I assume. So how does that come about? Obviously, I'm not asking you for who approached who about that situation.
Yeah.
But I mean, you wouldn't know. But how is that possible?
So obviously, I think people know that Adam Cole has been out recently. He's been injured. I was told that Christian has been Britt Baker's mentor, whatever that means. And they've been really close lately and blah, blah, blah. And then the next thing you know, I am told from a very reliable source, and that's the only reason that I reported this, that they had sex. And I totally believe that to be true. And it's very reliable information. So, another thing I was told after the fact is that they have an open relationship. Adam and Britt, right? So, in Christian, we know Jay Rizzo. He's divorced from his wife.
Okay.
So, but that's the kind of thing when you hear it's scandalous and people are very interested in it. I mean, there's memes online going on about my report today. So it definitely resonated. But this is not new to the wrestling business. This sort of thing going on in wrestling has been going on forever. It's not uncommon so much as it is just not reported, right? You're going to hear something like that from me, maybe from you. You're not going to hear that from Dave Meltzer. You're not going to hear that from Sean Ross Sapp on his $5 paywall. So that's the difference.
When I was with the WWE, when I was working with the WWE in 2007, there was a diva there, a girl who was married, who had agreed to 3 guys, but not at once. She said, "I'm not doing you all at once," and they all came down. They went. One went up, one went down, and one at a time. They all went up there and went. One came down and went, "You're next," and went up there. I remember this from that's the kind of weird that's going on. There was literally a woman who got banged by 3 people consecutively and had agreed to it. It's not, the wrestling locker room is not what you think it is.
No, absolutely not. And then I started hearing about this quote unquote drug floor at the Regency Hyatt in Jacksonville, Florida, where the AEW wrestlers and brass would meet and they'd party and they'd drink alcohol and they'd do drugs and they'd have a wild time. And again, I think if you're in the know, this is not going to be a shocking revelation to you. I think if you don't know how the wrestling business works, if you're not in the know, you're going to get offended by that, and you're going to think, wait a minute, there's no way so-and-so could be doing something like that. Well, yeah, actually they could, and they do, right? It's like, there was a recent conversation with Patrick Clark about main roster WWE talent doing cocaine. And he kind of alludes and hints and whatever. He doesn't really say. And I can tell you, I've been told there are talent that do that today, that work on the main roster, that are appearing on Raw, that have strippers back at their house, that have all kinds of wild parties. Like, so these marks in the IWC Twitter bubble, they are clueless. By the way, they're the people, Billy, that are telling us, laughably, that we have no idea what we're talking about.
So this is the thing, and when I tell you that when people come to England and they say to me, "Hey, we need to know how to get this, that, and the other," or can you, as someone who lives over there, like these are the things that I'm alluding to. So there are things that people do, and let me say this in without in their defense, this is lessened a lot over the years, especially over in the WWE, from partying back in 2007 when even Cena would be out and Cena would regularly, especially on tour, charge everything to his card, right? So like he's not who people think he is. Like obviously, I'm not saying this in a neck. Like he's Cena, but he's also likes to go out and he for me, I think he's the guy that's been on top since I've been covering this. He's the guy that was on top, who I think was the most popular with everybody else, because everybody loved John. Like and it was because of things like that. So that culture has reduced somewhat, but it still doesn't mean that people aren't doing it. And when I heard Patrick Clark talking, I knew exactly who that person was, and I know exactly who the people are that still do things. So, and I can imagine in AEW without having the people there, because look, I was involved in such activities, and I came out of a hotel room, and Charlotte Flair was going to the gym at 7:30 a.m. in the morning or whatever, and she was just like this, like, because that's and when you have your Charlottes and your Seth Rollinses and your Becky Lynches and these people on the roster, it's a lot more minuscule on that side of it. It's kept a lot under bar. It's not a public party. Yeah, after a show, some people may order some like drinks in, or they may have some drinks in catering or whatever. But in AEW, this is rife and encouraged, which is the difference. Yeah. And when I hear someone like Punk say, "I'm worked with children, and the EVPs couldn't run a target," I almost felt like even before we spoke that he was talking that this culture wasn't for him, that he didn't know that he was coming into all of this that he's against, because he didn't even party. He didn't even party back in 2011 and whatnot. When I saw him in a hotel, I saw him come down like to eat and to like socialize a little bit, but he wasn't up till like 3, 4 like some of these guys. He was up in bed like 12:30, 1 o'clock. That's not his thing at all. And to have it encouraged, I think some of the stuff that's bothering him comes from this, in my opinion. I don't know factually for a fact.
For sure. I mean, you got to think, whatever you think of Punk, here's a guy who comes from the WWE system. And it's not perfect, but it's night and day difference from AEW. And he comes to AEW and he wants to elevate AEW. And what he sees really is an indie. I mean, it's an embarrassingly bad operation. I mean, it really, truly is. And you got Tony Khan doing these fake media scrums, and he's hugging the wrestlers, and it's almost like a guy who didn't have a father growing up or something. Like he's looking at these wrestlers like, it's a bizarre thing. It really is. It's almost like
only child, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a study in psychology. I mean, it'd be a fascinating study. And so you got to think and I don't think Punk's alone, by the way. I think some of these, all ex WWE have come to AEW. They've gone through it and they're like, oh man, this is a crap show, right? I mean, look at Aleister Black. I fully expect to see that guy back in WWE. I mean, but it's like these people are coming across. They are high in their own supply because they weren't properly used in WWE, and WWE is the big evil giant, and they get out of WWE and they go to AEW, and they have more control over their creative. And in what they realize is, man, it's like Miro comes in as the best friend? What? The best friend of a mid-card guy that's never on TV? So they realize all of a sudden, okay, this isn't so great after all. In fact, I'm in a worse position, just ask Andrade, than I was in WWE. So then they have buyer's remorse. They're locked into these deals, and they want out.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that, I mean, Conan is a booker. Like when we talk to Conan, and he says the biggest problem he has is that he's always telling people, I can't push you all at once. Mm-hmm. But when you bring people in with a promise of a bigger push than you've had, which is what everybody's probably signed for, plus more money, that's the problem that you have. I mean, they've created a title for nearly everybody. I mean, they have like 15 belts or something. So they try to alleviate the problem by doing that. Like, you have a belt and you have a belt and you have a belt, but still, like, it's difficult with both Miro and Malachi Black. It's weird because I'm not one of these, these indie guys, these indie fans who think that everybody needs a push like Cesaro or whoever. See, Cesaro's a guy I'm not high on at all. I'm not high on Cesaro. I feel like he had his chances and they tried and it didn't work. But with Miro, when he was the heel Rusev, and when he comes in, I do see potential in him. With Aleister Black, with that character and the presentation of it, when he came in, he should never have given the win back to Cody. He won. He should have moved on. He should have been your homegrown main eventer. He should have been someone where, and I don't like Malachi Black. Malachi Black or Aleister Black aided in getting my Twitter account cancelled 5 years ago. So I hate that guy because he came out and was sticking up for women, and I was basically mocking him for breaking character. I was like, this isn't very dark and gothic of you or something like. So I was really getting under his skin, but I still call it as it is. I don't like him personally, but I could see that there was a star quality there. The people were responding to it. His music was getting a huge pop immediately, and he should have been booked properly. So with those two guys that sit, with Andrade, that's like a can't miss Mexican star. With Buddy Murphy, that is one of your flippy flops who can do the wrestling, can do the flipping, and can sell. And he looks good. Like, he has got a lot of muscularity, and for someone who moves the way he does. So I would push that guy because he has the look, and he can work. I don't think he can talk particularly well, but like we've never really seen him given a chance. So I think in there you had 4 guys who WWE did miss the boat on. But notice I'm not saying Cesaro and Ruby Riott and everybody else, right? So people will let go for a reason. But in those 4, I do believe they should have been hired, and there was a way that you could have booked them, especially Malachi. And they dropped the ball with every single one of them because they had too many ex-WWE talents to push. At the same time, they had to show they were doing something. I don't get it. I don't get the thing with Hangman Page. I think Danny Garcia is a joke. I can't believe he main evented the show a few weeks ago. I don't get the thing with this. I don't get the thing with this Utah guy. It's the wrong people that have been picked, like completely the wrong people to make this point. So I don't think it's very good to watch. I think it's difficult to watch. I fall asleep trying to watch it every Wednesday. But yeah, what else? Is there anything else going on other than that? I mean, did that Britt Christian situation have any political ramifications, or is it just just a thing that happened?
So I've been hearing for a long time about Britt Baker and her backstage, sort of locker room behavior with the women, and a lot of the women in AEW don't like her. She's a bitch. She's very rude. She's backstabbing. She's doing the political game, et cetera, et cetera.
And this comes from being pushed, right? Because this is still a year before she went to AEW. This is a girl who did a squash match with Nia Jax. So this has to be because of the push and the extra money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and she was just rude to everybody, and so she had a lot of heat amongst the women in the AEW locker room. And they, at one point, had gone to Tony Khan complaining about Britt Baker, and he basically sided with Britt Baker. One of her biggest deals has been her sort of very real life dislike of Thunder Rosa. That's a very real thing, and Thunder Rosa has been off. And if you believe it's only because of a back injury, then I've got some oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you. So, it's just, there's a lot of problems with Britt Baker in AEW. And a lot of people are puzzled by, the push of Britt Baker and what they're doing versus what they're doing with, for example, Thunder Rosa. They've actually gone out of their way in some ways to make her look pretty weak, pretty bad. So, there's a lot of drama in the women's locker room. A lot of it stems around Britt Baker. There's Britt Baker Christian. So there's just a lot of drama in general in AEW. And, I just think a lot of it's been going on all along. Is it bubbling now and like getting worse? Sure, absolutely. But it's been going on under the surface for a long time. And because it hasn't been addressed by anybody, because it hasn't been reported by the wrestling media, it's actually amplified the problem. And it's climaxed with, this entire deal with Punk and the Elite and this whole sort of ordeal. And now it's out of control. Tony Khan has got a roster that he's not in control of. How can you have a boss at any job and you go out there and you watch CM Punk cuck him like he did, which was hilarious, by the way. And then you're supposed to respect that boss and listen to that boss. He was totally clowned. So I don't know how he regains the respect and control of the AEW locker room, but that's what he has to do immediately.
Is there any truth, the Cody just got the AEW that ended up manifesting itself was completely different to what Cody had in mind. And likewise now, it's also not really the picture that Kenny saw. And whilst Kenny has loyalty to the Bucks, there's actually a part of him that wants out as well, because there's a lot of that I'm hearing, that there's interest there, and more so with Kenny than anybody else, as somebody that could be a surprise person that leaves.
Absolutely, he has sent out feelers to WWE. That's a true story.
Right, okay.
So it's a very interesting dynamic. And the Bucks have too, by the way, through Kevin Owens. So
but if they're the ones who are kind of involved in this party culture and some of these backstage problems in terms of the creative and whatnot, why would they want to? Why would everybody be leaving? And to be honest, if you got rid of if you lost the 3 EVPs, whereas it would be an embarrassment, would the company not be then more organized with Tony Khan then hiring proper wrestling people to be in charge? I don't know, maybe a Jericho, maybe not a Jericho, maybe this could be a nightmare. But I'm trying to think. Oh, his name's popped out of my head completely. So Tony Schiavone and Jackal from WWE from the Truth.
What the hell is his name? Jesus. Yeah, he's been in Impact and he's been in WWE and he's
right.
I know you. What the hell is his name?
I can't believe his name's popped out.
He was in AEW briefly as well when they had the partnership with Impact. He was managing Kenny and the Elite.
Yeah, he's still doing that now, but I don't.
What the hell is his name? Yeah, that's going to actually annoy me.
Should we just say the Jackal?
The Jackal. But to your point, Billy, I do agree. What do they lose if they lose Omega and the Bucks as VPs. Like, literally nothing. They're really more EVPs in name only. So they don't lose anything. And to be honest with you, when they have a show and they're not on it, I mean, it's not like the viewership is really any different. So at the end of the day, who really cares? So losing them, I think, is fine. But to your point, Cody, yeah, Cody saw the writing on the wall. He absolutely did. And he got out. And in hindsight, I think what you'll see is, history would be very kind to Cody for realizing it was the right time to go. Because he did have a direction. He was a founding member. And he had a direction, and Tony Khan had a direction. And, sometimes when you get too many cooks in the kitchen, it's not a good thing. Because they have different visions. And I could see AEW start to lose what they started out doing. They really became this sort of like indie fed with a TV deal. And I think that was not Cody's vision. Cody saw the writing on the wall. He got out, bottom line. And I think history would be very kind to him because as we're seeing now, like, it's become a real...
Where do you think they go with the next TV deal next year? Like, do they get one? Do they stay here? Does Discovery boot them off? Like, where are they going to end up? Because what do you get paid for 900,000 viewers, which would probably be more. I know they're doing 1 million in the last few weeks because they've been embroiled in controversy. Mm-hmm. They think obviously that's now their audience, and they'll do well tomorrow too. Yeah. They'll do fine tomorrow as we're recording this on Tuesday. This may come out actually after Wednesday, but I'm predicting that they'll do fine for that show too. I predict like another 1.2. But then what? But then what? How do you even with 1.2? Where do you wind up on TV? I don't think you increase your deal. Definitely not.
No, there's no chance. I mean, especially when you factor in all the instability of the Warner Brothers merger with Discovery, there is virtually, I'd say, no chance that they increase their ad revenue, right? And the problem is, of course, their budget, their expenses only seems to be going up. But at the same time, they're not going to potentially increase their ad revenue. So that's an issue. I mean, they're not really profitable anyway. That's an issue altogether.
They're not profitable at all.
Right.
No, I was told that initially in their first year that their TV deals, the TV deal money would cover the salaries, and then their business model was to incur a 20 million loss for the first 4 years per year, which would obviously include marketing costs, traveling from show to show, catering. There was a 20 million loss budget, but he was so keen to get this off the ground that he was going to use all of the TV deal money to pay the talent, which I believe was $42 million a year was the salary cap for talent, right? You now have 16 guys eating that money. So all of the other, 80, 90 people are being paid out of his own pocket. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, you also have the catering, the ring crew, the travel from to the setup, the meet, the publicity. That's all. So how much are they actually losing? And the video game too. It's got to be over $100 million a year. They're not even close to a profit.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, this happens when you're old. Don Callis, that's who it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. So the problem is he gets us off the ground. They're not profitable. He continues to invest a ton of money without that return on investment. I mean, we're just not seeing it. And wrestling is much cheaper to produce than typical TV. We know that. But he's just not doing it.
Let's add the point that, when you have what he has, the concern is not as high. A Vince McMahon actually couldn't really afford to bankroll this. Let's be realistic. He has stupid money, which he's using in a stupid way. So we need to. This isn't hurting him necessarily. This loss is not hurting him like it would a normal business person. Let's get that. Let's get that out there too.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. I mean, it's a private company. It's funded by his father, Shad, right? So, hey, if Shad, who's one of the richest people in the world, says, I want to put 300 more million into AEW, he can do that. He's going to do that. And Tony Khan can continue to book Rampage like he's literally in his mother's basement with a fake wrestling ring, having actual figures that he's having fake matches with himself. Like, it feels like that's how he's booking the shows. But he can do that if he wants to, because they have that money. It's a private company. And what we found with Tony Khan is he's extremely dishonest. He says things that are not true. And if this guy wants to come out and talk about how great they're doing, well, who are you, Brad Shepard, to disprove that? Because you don't have the books. And so those are the sort of games he plays. But we know, obviously being in the know, he's not profitable. And he's going in a direction that I don't see being profitable potentially ever.
And here's the thing, like, so it stinks to me. It feels like to me, it's a company where it's like, hey, sorry I didn't say I love you. Sorry I didn't hug you. Here you go, son. Like, this is my gift to you, first of all. And second of all, this gift that he was given, it seems to be driving him insane. It seems like the environment is bringing out, like, the pro wrestler in him. Because obviously, everybody that does this, he probably wanted to be a wrestler when he grew up. And then when he's sitting there going, I know how Jim Crockett feels, and I'm not going to take this. Dude, what are you going to do? If you run against them, they'll kill you. Like, there's nothing. I mean, what you've proven is that you're rattled by the fact that they put on an NXT show for free alongside your show, right? They put on the Clash, and then they put on NXT Worlds Collide, whatever it was called, and that rattled you to the point. What is your response? Because if you're pissed off that they put a show against yours. So if you put a show against theirs, that's not a response because that's what you're rattled about in the first place. So what are you going to do? Are you going to run a free pay-per-view alongside WrestleMania? Because that's the only thing you could do. That's the only thing you could do is run free pay-per-view alongside night one of WrestleMania, which doesn't affect their business model because they're on a network where people will just watch it later and it makes no difference to them anyway. Like, he could do nothing to hurt him. And for me, I saw somebody who is mentally broken by this job, by being involved in this industry. The industry has, like, consumed him in some ways.
Yeah, and I think the wrestling business will do that to you. Especially, again, Tony Khan is not coming from a wrestling background. You know, this is a guy who's coming in as a fan, who's never had to go through these sort of things before in the wrestling business. And so he's learning on the job. And it shows. He's not ready for these sort of things he's coming across. You know, when you look at Fulham, when you look at the Jaguars, when you look at his ventures as a leader, which, by the way, was all given to him by Daddy, right? It's not like he worked hard for these things. He was born out of his daddy's into the right family and given these opportunities, right?
Like the royal family. Like I've been saying about the royal family this week. Like, I'm supposed to care about this thing this week, which I haven't cared about at all. So, yeah, I mean, that's the same thing.
Yeah. And he's had all these opportunities that most normal people would never get. And he's just not qualified for them. He's never been there. He's never done that. He's never earned that. And so we're seeing that because he's been a failure as a leader. And you know, and you can't buy that. You either are a leader or you're not. And that's a big problem with Tony Khan is, you know, he's learning on the job and he's not ready. And he's coming in as a wrestling fan rather than a business executive who's been there, done that.
Any other major news this week that you have, like, that's worth mentioning, or should we close out?
I would say stay tuned to my Patreon account. Obviously, I'll break news there. Patreon.com/Brad Shepard Unleashed. Usually, Ringside News will pick up my stories. But for the most part, like you, when my news is posted, even if it's public, the other sites want nothing to do with it, even though it's true, because they don't like my wrestling opinions. They don't like my political opinions. They don't like that I don't kiss their ass, et cetera, et cetera. So what they do is gatekeep and ignore, and then try to steal credit.
So what you have a relationship? Do you have a relationship with Steve Carrier or not?
I do have a relationship with Steve. So I've known Steve for, I would say several years.
Because he doesn't cover my news.
Steve, I would encourage you to message him. I knew Steve through someone else, like a mutual party that I worked with at the time. That's how I got connected with Steve. I've known him for several years. Steve has known my work for several years, obviously more details than I, in some cases, can report. And some of the times he can verify, obviously, what I'm saying himself. So we developed a rapport, and he developed a trust in what I say. And Steve is a guy who, to his credit, whether he likes you, whether he doesn't, whether it's Sap, whether it's me, whether it's whoever, if he's got that information, if he believes in you, he will report it. That's why I'd say reach out.
Would he come on this show?
That's very interesting. Would he? I think he would. Steve is a guy who, he's not part of this PC culture. He's very politically correct.
I didn't know that. He doesn't report me, so I always put him in the same. I always say, "Oh, this is a Raj. This is a wannabe." Because sometimes, so these dirt sheets, Raj. The difference between Steve and them, Raj is is a. He covered that thing with me and Sap. He's like, "Oh, this is so great," and led like 8 tweets about it. Like he's a loser.
Yeah.
But with Steve, I think he's crossed over to the point where he doesn't just do the copycatting, and he does his own news. And I've made accusations towards him at times where it's like, "Oh, now you want to be like the exclusive guy? Just stay in your lane, because this exclusive is not your exclusive. Like this is either Brad's or from my Patreon or whatever." But then I saw recently he had a bit of a meltdown, and he accused somebody of, "Oh, you got this from Brad Shepard," and I was like going, "Huh." Because you stole from Brad Shepard too, because he did actually have the same stuff. Now you say you knew the same people, that makes sense. But I thought he was stealing from you, and then he then he backed you. And I found it very confusing as to what is this guy? He's having a meltdown. He's arguing with people that I hate, but he won't cover me. What is he? Is he social justice? Is he outspoken? I find him very confusing. I'd like to get him on here to see what he's all about and see what's going on there.
That'd be a fascinating interview for sure.
Right. My only news this week from my part was everybody knows Roman and Logan was happening. The background story that I heard behind that was that Logan wasn't on that show. Braun Strowman and Roman was the main event a few weeks back. Braun Strowman is very popular in Saudi. He's always been pushed there. He has a relationship with the Prince. He was personally flown out for Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk. That's how tight he was. And they were accepting of this main event. Now, Logan Paul contacted Triple H to say, "I would like to be on the Saudi show. I would like to promote Prime Energy in Saudi Arabia. So I'd like to get on the show." At which point, the wheels were in motion, and they decided that they would ask him if he wanted to be in the main event. And once he had no problem losing that match, knowing that he would be at the forefront of the promotion, and as would Prime Energy, with him and KSI, who own the company, he was willing to do it, which changed the main event. So Braun will still be on the show, but maybe even Brock, I don't know 100% at this point. But that's the background behind Logan replacing Braun Strowman, was around the request that he would like to be on the show to promote Prime Energy. WWE actually when they signed Logan Paul, they didn't actually enter into the whole Saudi thing. It was quite sensitive. Some guys don't want to go there, some guys do. They were actually going to let this one go by. I don't think there was any plans to ask Logan Paul to do it this early in his contract to say, "Oh, hey, do you want to go out to Saudi where you may receive some criticism or whatnot?" By the way, what's weird? When you're on your background, like the way you're sitting, it looks like you have two devil horns. Where there's a collar there or something, and it looks like, and then you have your lips there. It looks like two horns.
Hey,
watch this back and see, like you're the devil. I was like,
by the way, there's people in the IWC that would tell you I am the devil.
That's exactly why I am. If you sit in the right place, exactly where you are now, you look like the devil. But as I was saying, that was the background as to what happened. He said to them, "Hey, I'd like to come to Saudi. I'd love to go to Saudi. I'd like to promote my drink, get my drink promoted over there." And this is how it came. I don't know if you knew that story, but that was my main story this week. So it wasn't just like, oh, the match is happening like with 6 other sheets. I tried to find out why. So that's what I got this week. It's not a lot, but people insist on having something every week on here. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a fascinating situation. By the way, I'm interested in the match. That made me intrigued. I mean, I think Logan Paul, he's a guy who's got a massive social media following. I think he's a guy that necessarily maybe the wrestling bubble doesn't get. But he's a total natural, got a massive social media following. And by the way, I mean, the guy can go. I mean, he's learning still, but he can go. This is a really intriguing matchup for me. I think nobody thinks that Logan Paul can win and blah, blah, blah. But I still think it's going to be a very fascinating situation. And they can always do Braun and Roman at another time. We've seen it before, but we've never seen this. So I like the idea of what they did. I like the little press conference. And I think they're actually shaping up the Saudi show to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that match is more interesting than going back to Braun and Roman anyway.
Yeah.
You can do that again because it's under different characters. One's a heel and a face. This will swapped around. We know it worked well with Brock Lesnar, despite what people complained about. How can you do it again and again? Well, it's because you have your star creation system. That's why you need to wheel out Brock Lesnar all the time. But yeah, they can easily do that. They can easily get back to that match again. But yeah, this is more interesting. Even from like the wrestling geeky side of me, which I do have, not to the extent of these other people, but I want to know the finish. How do you protect Logan?
Mm-hmm.
Do you bother protecting Logan? If Roman needs help beating Logan Paul, does that protect him? Is that good for him after all this? Like, it's fascinating to me. Like, I'm interested. So I mean, even from that geeky side, I think it's a bigger match, but also I want to see how they get out of this. Is it going to be a clean loss? How much does Logan Paul kick out of? Do the Usos interfere? Like, it's interesting to me for the weird, the little wrestling stuff. I'm fine with. I've never said I'm not a fan. This is what people don't understand. Like, I'm not saying I'm above you guys. Like, I'm not saying I'm not a fan, but I'm a fan who talks to other fans. Like, I'm a fan who knows fans that or expired fans who from different walks of life. Like that's the main thing that I bring to the table. And when I talk from a very different perspective to the other podcasts that you guys probably listen to. But so I'm not going to ever come on here and just do my and that kind of shit. And to be honest, I never understood it from the perspective of this product's really stale from what it was. Like, if you're going to get a surprise, if The Rock's going to come out and win the Royal Rumble, for example, if The Rock's going to be number 30, he's going to come out and win the Royal Rumble in Texas, why do you want me to come on here 5 days before and say, oh, The Rock's coming, The Rock's going to be in Texas, he's going to win from number 30? I don't get that. But hey, look, each to their own. Like, if that's what you want, that's what you want. I recently, despite the fact I'd heard that Roman was going to have this long title run, I read these dirt sheet rumors from Meltzer about splitting the belts.
Oh God, I saw that too.
And I was like, okay, I'm a little bit intrigued. Usually, I would send a text to I pretty much knew, but I would usually send a text to check. I didn't send the text to check. So I went in, despite having a 200-pound bet on Roman Reigns. I went in with a tiny bit of intrigue that Meltzer might be remotely credible and that Drew might win in England.
Right.
But obviously we know that man has no newsworthy credibility. He somehow has credibility when Britt Baker's lying there and saying, "Oh, I hope Meltzer liked it," which is pathetic, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has no news credibility as far as I'm concerned. So
None.
Yeah, none. Brad, let's finish up. Let's do your plugs.
All right, cool. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you like this. Maybe you don't like this. Follow me anyway. At It's Brad Shepard, Shepard. Also, if you're interested, subscribe to my Patreon, patreon.com/Brad Shepard Unleashed. Check out my podcast, Brad Shepard Unleashed. New episodes every Thursday. iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. I think you're sure to enjoy it if you enjoy Billy's work as well.
Yeah, and I would like to at some point not just have you back on, but I'd like to set up some sort of roundtable at some point. There's actually a lot of people in this circle that like us both and wanted us to talk. Like there's people that you like and that like me and thought and were like, if you actually spoke to one of them. One of the people pushing, before I contacted you, one of the people that pushed me to do it was Joe Cronin. I don't know if you know that.
Okay, yeah.
Joe Cronin, Jay Leto.
Yep.
Jay Leto, who used to run PWP. Is that right?
Yeah, one of the PW. I remember, I'm familiar with the name as well.
Yeah, so there's Jay Leto. Obviously, there's potential here with this Steve Carrier situation if he's not who I thought he was. So I mean, I'd like to at some point organize some kind of roundtable, content share, everything like that, and get this community together to combat the other side of the community, because we know what that side is. We know that they're on the same page. We know what their goal is. We know that they're influential as well, which is the worst thing, because we know that's the reason why Tony Khan books this. Maybe why Triple H is doing this. When I see people like Sam Roberts and I see these guys on it, I think, Jesus, you're making the wrong. This is the wrong route to go. When I see Saturn on Fox, these voices are being listened to, and I think they're the voice. The WWE and companies think that they're a voice of some type of community. This community is silent because we're too busy arguing with each other, when we should actually be trying to collectively, we can get a lot more people on side, and you'll be surprised how many people are bored of this product and actually want to see the product that we want to see. You'll be surprised how many people actually don't like Johnny Gargano and don't, like I said, don't like him. He's strong. I don't hate him, but I just don't think I agree with you. You said it best when you said it's not a good look. So yeah, hopefully down the line you can do some stuff like that. But until then, the usual places, the dirtysheets.com for wrestling news, lockbetting.com for all my betting stuff. I'm covering all sports, 111 months of consecutive track profit. That is my bread and butter. You can also find me over on the Sports Gambling Podcast and on K100 every week with Disco Conan and Joe. I've been Billy. This has been Brad Shepard. This is Brad Shepard's show this week. So I did say that at the top in the intro. Thanks for coming on, and we'll see you guys next week.